Hello, beautiful sunshines. Welcome to Now That's Love.
With your favorite mother-daughter duo, Ashlyn and
Janae LaFleur, where you get to know thyself, love thyself, and become the best version of self.
because the greatest love story that you are ever going to tell is the one you create with yourself every day.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Now That's Love.
Yes, welcome to Now.
Today we are going to be talking about triggers. And I know that we've been talking about this previously in different podcasts, but today we're going to nail the head on the coffin and make it official on why we do it, how we do it, and how we can fix it in a way, heal it, and go back and rewire our brains.
Yeah, how to recognize these babies.
Mm-hmm. It's the key.
So remember, before we start on everything, is that triggers are our friends. They're actually just little circuits that have been planted in our brain that have us reacting to things, our bodies reacting to something in the moment that really is from our past. So there are helpmates, because otherwise we're going to stay stuck. And it's going to just become a bigger reaction if we don't go into these of how we react to people, if they're crying, if they are whiny, if they're angry, or how we even treat ourselves. Something happens and we start beating ourselves up. We may have done that in our childhood, because if we beat ourselves up, then we didn't have to have our parents beat ourselves. We were sent to our room, and so we're beating ourselves up. We learned quickly to be the ones to be the beat up game for ourselves. So this is compassion when we recognize them, and the letting go of the shame and the guilt of ourselves and others. So.
Yes. So, like you said, they're stories from our past acting themselves out in the very present moment.
Yes.
With ourselves.
Oh, is that real?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're really being aware with yourself and you're on this human experience, it's going to be weekly as you start to do it. And sometimes it's so intense and you're wondering, what the holy moly, why is this so intense? And just because I'm walking through it right now, I'm so grateful we're doing this. Yeah. I want to share a story at the very beginning of what's going on in my life that's real. Is we all know that I went through the story of narcissistic abuse for a while. And after 4 years, I decided 3 weeks ago to get on to Match.com, because if I'm going to look at the hamster wheel of life, the person's not going to just show up probably organically. Because obviously 4 years. And the first while, I really did a lot of healing work and stuff. I wanted to be in a better place. But doing that 3 or 4 days into it, because you're looking at people's pictures, and for me, I'm not comfortable with walking through, because I've done so much work on myself of not being like judgmental and critical, but that's something you kind of are doing. My brain is wired, and all of us are brain with what the triggers that we have, that it's going to keep me safe, right? So, and I do a good job, but I kept on having to face the fears. That's part of, like, here's a trigger that might make you want to stay stuck or freeze. And you recognize it where it comes from. It's a circuit. You calm it down. You go in there in that real calm, beautiful place. But to add to it, see if you have a compound effect. Like I say, when you're lifting weights, compound exercising. I went in to get my car registered, and it came up, the engine light was on. So there was a lot with that. And then there was money involved. And then to compound on that, so now I'm hitting all the areas of my life. My job is changing and I'm switching over to a different place and starting kind of from ground zero. So then there's the fear of money. but if this was like the first experience of any of this in my life, it would have been not so reactive. It would have just been, okay, let's solve this. Let's walk through it. Like, what do I need to do? But because a lot of us will have some serious history on things, it can seem like a humongous mountain, and then you start losing sleep, and then you're like, holy moly. So I'm saying this because you can kind of start to, if you don't work through things as they rise, and I didn't know how to do this many years ago, and then just up till just probably the last 4 years, did I know how to work through things. I know how to get into that calm state, but then my mind was still challenged, trying so hard to protect me, survival, money, don't get hurt by a person, that kind of thing. And so I got myself into a calm state, and I want to read to you. I said, what do I need to hear right now? And this is what came. This is the exact page I turned to from this beautiful book.
A New Earth, for those that are just listening.
One thing we need to know, this is exactly what I went to. Life will give you whatever experiences is most helpful for the evolution of your consciousness. How do you know this is the experience you need? Because this is the experience you are having in this moment. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, so face the storm. This is exactly what I'm needing to spiritually evolve. And I said, what else do I need to hear? Because my heart was racing. And it says, the voice in your head, way back in the page, I went right to it, and I totally highlighted this baby. The voice in your head will be telling sad, anxious, or angry stories about yourself or your life, about other people, about the past, future, or imaginary events. The voice will be blaming, accusing, complaining, imagining, and you are totally identified with whatever the voice says. Believe all is distorted thoughts. At this point, the addiction to unhappiness has set in. And this is about the pain body. And I just highlighted the whole thing. What we perceive as physical matter is energy vibrating, moving at particular range of frequencies. Thoughts consist of the same energy vibrating at a higher frequency than matter, which is why they cannot be seen or touched. Thoughts have their own range of frequency, with negative thoughts at the lower end of the scale and positive thoughts at the higher. The vibrational frequency of the pain body resonates with that of negative thoughts, which is why only those thoughts can feed the pain body. So what did I have witnessed to myself is that my pain body had emerged, because I had boom, boom, boom. And it was so happy. The usual pattern of thought creating emotion is reversed in the case of the pain body, at least initially. Emotion from the pain body quickly gains control of your thinking, and once your body has been taken over by the pain body, your thinking becomes negative. It is not so much that you cannot stop your train of negative thoughts, but that you don't want to with the pain body. This is because the pain body at the time is living through you, pretending to be you, and to the pain body, pain is pleasure. It eagerly devours every negative thought. In fact, the usual voice in your head has now become the voice of the pain body. It has taken over the internal dialogue. A vicious circle becomes established between the pain body and your thinking. Every thought feeds the pain body, and in turn, the pain body generates more thoughts. At some point, after a few hours or even a few days, it has replenished itself and returns to its dormant stage, leaving behind a depleted organism and a body that is much susceptible to illness. If that sounds to you like a psychic parasite, you are right. That's exactly what it is. So that's when the triggers we're going to be talking about today, when we find ourselves that we keep on reacting to certain situations over and over again, like it's a circuit, it's just showing us, once you recognize it, you have recognized the circuit from your past. And if it's immense, it's the pain body. You have the ego for the shorter triggers, the littler triggers, and you have the pain body when it comes collapsing in. So I wanted to state this today, because sometimes we get so scared, and that's what I've experienced the last 10 days. And I'm kind of starting to feel like whatever Ash and I are going to talk about, I get to experience it, or she gets to experience it. So we can go on a deeper level. And then once we're done with this video, all life just becomes roses again.
We won't have triggers. No, I'm kidding. You'll forever have triggers.
We'll always have things we work through, but the intensity of being able to really truly come to you raw and say, when you start to have an emotional reaction to something and it hurts, it creates suffering, or it scares the holy crap out of you. The leaning into, like walking into the lake, the little lake that's a mirage type thing that we've talked about in a couple of other videos, but also becoming into that beautiful calm state. And Ash and I are going to talk about the tool belts and some other different things.
That's why it's so important because like when you start working on your triggers and you're able to progress through them, you're able to be in the present moment and not let it take over your life. And that's why recognition and these tools that we're about to give you are so important, because then you're going to have healthier relationships at your job, in your home, and even just with yourself. And those are just so important moving forward. And it comes down to how do you have to adjust as a child. And I
Yeah.
felt like I had to think about that this week of we depended on our parents for survival. So you ended up having to fit in to get shelter and food. Like in our brains, you don't think about it as a kid, but
Yeah.
realistically, it's the key to survival. You
Yeah.
want to be like the top dog. No, I'm kidding. You don't want to be the runt. You want to be the one that is getting recognition from your parents. And it's programmed in our brain, and now it's showing up in ourselves, and it's also reflecting off the relationships that we're in.
Mm.
And react to them. And I noticed that even just with the relationships that I've brought into this life with my kids, with my husband, with my friends, it's not necessarily them. It's my reflection in the mirror saying, "Oh, you said this." That reminded me of when I was 6 years old and my dad told me to sit down, be quiet, eat my dinner. And so if Jerome was to say, "Hey, you need to be quiet," that would trigger me right away. Even just from friends I grew up with, they told me I talked too much. So
Mm-hmm.
that would trigger me right away. And I even told Jerome that in the beginning of our relationship. Like, that's one trigger of mine that please be cautious around because, and looking back, it wasn't his to be cautious around. It was something that I had to work through, that I had to build self-confidence in myself that, girl, it's like, it's okay if you talk a lot. Be with people that want to talk to you. Some people like more quiet people. I'm a friend that likes to talk. And that's when I started realizing, okay, it's within me. People around you don't need to juggle to be around you. You need to start looking internally.
Right.
So when things trigger us, we want them other people to be like us. Yesterday, like my mom mentioned, we go through. I'm like, I think I've worked through my triggers. I was at the dentist office with Malay yesterday, and he wanted to play his Mario game. But I told him, I mean, I got to remind y'all, he's 3.5 years old. And I'm expecting him to act like me as an adult, as a 26-year-old adult. I'm expecting a 3.5-year-old to act like me and understand what I'm saying. And in the time, it seemed realistic. I was setting my boundaries with him, and I was saying, all right, Malay, you can play the Mario game, but the second they call us into the office, we're going to have to go. And of course, he gets started on like just playing around with the game. He can't really play the game, but he was just kind of playing with the remote and like, all right, Malay, it's our turn. And of course, what do you expect to tell a 3.5-year-old that they can't play their game anymore and they're going to have to go in and brush their teeth? Like, which one would you pick, even as an adult? And so I'm like dragging him into the dentist office. He's crying, he's screaming. Obviously, I'm trying to regulate my emotions, and you feel embarrassed that he's crying. And so we go in, and the nurse is trying to talk to me about, do you have any concerns? And I'm like, he's still screaming on my lap, like drool is like going down, snot all over my shirt, just screaming in my ear. And I felt in that moment so triggered. I'm like, stop whining, grow up. You don't need this help. Like basically everything that I feel within myself. I was like, you don't need help. You don't need to cry. Bucker up, buttercup. Like in my head, that's what I was saying. And like, just like, listen. And so the nurse walked out and everything was fine. But then the doctor came in, started brushing his teeth. We went berserk. I had to like drag him from underneath the table. Anywho, it was a crazy triggering moment for me where I was expecting a 3.5-year-old to act like an adult. And the whining was triggering to me. And obviously, as parents, if you are a parent, you can totally understand when you just, with the conscious parenting going around right now, it's amazing. But at the same time, I also feel like we've been so hard on ourselves because it's like, you don't want to yell. You don't want to, like, all of a sudden you're going to be the trauma in their brain. And just remember that you can still go back and apologize to your kid and rewire your brain, help them rewire their brain, and by working on yourself. But I got home and I started doing more research just about triggers and triggers within myself. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, it totally played out today. I was just full of triggers and it reflected out on my kid. It wasn't his fault that I was wanting to yell at him and say, sit down, you know? It was a normal reaction for a lot of people, but I had to have a self-reflection of my triggers.
Well, and
So,
they
such as the
said,
whining, like the cry for help, sometimes that can be annoying or trigger you. Whenever someone asks for help, I realized that in my life that whenever I asked for help at a young age, it was like, you can do it on your own. You're a big kid. Or, well, you've always been able to do it by yourself. I've been told that before. I never thought that you needed my help. When deep down inside, I actually did need help and protection. And so whenever people ask me for help now, I'm like, do the fucking research, do it yourself. Why are you asking for help? And even just like with little things, not big things. Like if someone asks me, hey, I really need help with like this thing in my life right now, can you help me? I'm always down for that. But just little things can just enrage me, or not enrage me, but trigger me, because I'm like, I did it myself, you can do it yourself. And even just whenever rage comes up, if you had a parent that yelled at you, that might be a triggering thing for you. Lying, if you caught somebody lying, maybe you had a parent that was consistently lying to you, even just about little things. Like, oh, we can't go to the playground right now because it's on fire, and you just start recognizing these little lies that your parents are telling you that are
that
not
might start
truthful.
with Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Trigger. Thanks,
Just
Santa
kidding.
Claus.
Imagination land. Well, and with Ashlyn, what she is talking about too, is they say in therapy that if you can't really remember parts of your childhood of how did my parents treat me? Why am I being triggered by my child right now about this? There can be two factors in that. It can be that you had to go into your room and take care of yourself. So you parented your little self in
Mm-hmm.
those moments. And so now you're reacting that way with your child. So like if they are whining and different things, and then you were sent, when you were whining, you were sent to your room, and then you're beating yourself up like, okay, well, when I'm whiny, I get abandoned. Like I have to be like, I don't get that, I'm not getting
Nurturing. Mm-hmm.
the nurturing aspect. Or the other end is that's how you're reacting to your children right now, what's showing up. Like if they text message you 20 messages, they're freaking out, and there's a trigger that happens within you, and then you send them a message trying to help them out, and they're like, never mind, you can't help, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's reactive to you. It can be that how you react back is how now it's going to show up to you, actually the truth of how you took things as a child from your parents and how they
Mm-hmm.
reacted in a similar situation.
Yeah.
So it can be
And
both
that's why I feel
ends.
like I was very avoidant with Malay, because you were taught to send us up to our rooms, which
Yep.
you could have done far worse. You could have smacked our butts, but instead you send us up to our rooms, and I'd rather have
Yep.
that. But I think that also made me, as an adult now, deal with things alone and seclude me.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
And with Malay, I was like, just
We're
handle it
breaking the
on your
ties.
own. Go to your room. I don't want to deal with this
Right.
right now. I don't want to deal with
Yes.
your emotions. And you're also teaching your child that their
Oh,
emotions
they're
are not
alone.
heard and that
Yeah, they're not.
they can't be dealt with.
And it seems like an easy fix in the beginning just to say, go to your room, just go to your room, go to your room. And like you have the self awareness of saying, hey, I'm not going to do that anymore. I have got to come into that. Like when you're in the trigger state, you're not going to be like, oh, I need to sit down with my child. You
Mm-hmm.
don't think that. You have that instant. The trigger is why it's called a trigger. It's an instant reaction. You're triggered instantly. A circuit that's in your brain. And now, if you don't take a breath and take a moment, you are going to keep on repeating the same reactions. Either it's, like your own beat up game, critical mind, like I never am going to be able to do this. You're beating yourself up, or you're beating somebody else up, or whatever it is. And oh my goodness, do they not just keep on showing us life of like,
Yes. And that's why I think, and also just that moment, but I've also realized with friends and my relationships that I had to reframe this. You have to reframe the situation. So, how I look at the person and myself. So, instead of me looking at it like we're sitting opposite ends of the table, of that long, medieval table, instead, we're looking at it side by side. And I want to also mention with this that if you are in an unhealthy relationship, this can't be done,
mm-mm,
sadly.
no
You may have to do this more in a manner of just pretend of next
journaling. Yeah.
journaling next to each other,
Visualize.
visualizing.
Yeah.
But if you are in a healthy relationship, friendship, even with your kids, realizing that you're on the same team and that this is a trigger that can be worked on together. Um, the behavior is the problem, not the person.
Yeah. Right. Ashlyn's listing out our tool belt of the three things of just recognizing it first. You're going into that calm state, and then you're recognizing that, hey, listen, like we've talked about before, as much as we would like to blame shame the person or
Mm-hmm.
the incident that's happening right now on somebody else, or some, like I wanted to, for me, I started to go down the blame shame thing of even just on my own self. It's like, wow, I've gone 4 years without the dating, or
Yeah.
oh, that was really quick, and then it was instant. The fear of dating, and it just kind of was bouncing on a ping pong table. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, well, the reason you've just really got to dive into the fact that you're just trying to stay safe. There's a circuit in your brain that wants to completely 100% keep you safe and never go down the road of barely being able to make it out alive out of a relationship. So
Yeah.
it's that, and like Ashlyn said, I'm not going to go sit down with that person
Yeah.
that I
It's
got
working
triggered.
with somebody that actually wants to be worked with. You're not forcing
Someone you
them to
care
sit
about,
down.
right? Someone you
Yeah.
still want in your life. That is the key.
And that
You still want
wants
them in your
you.
life.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to go and talk to them, sit down. And one thing that is really good that Ashlyn and I talked about yesterday that she had mentioned that I thought was so key is that it's not like sitting across from each other. It's more like sitting side by side. Hey, we're a team. This is a situation, and you're not the bad person. It's like, I am a good friend, a good partner, that reacted this way. Okay, so you're detaching yourself from the way you reacted, the circuit wiring, and you're saying that this is how you rewire your brain. I am a good partner. I am a good mom that just reacted this way. So reflecting upon
Yeah.
it,
Yesterday, I had to
Malay.
do this for myself. I had to tell
Right.
myself, okay, I am a good mom that pushed my child's emotions away or overly reacted on him screaming and yelling.
Yeah. And so when you tell your brain, if given the opportunity again, I would like to react this way. And I'm telling you, this for me is numero uno. This is how I
Mhm.
did so many. I literally felt like almost in 24 hours, I was given the situation again. Okay, I really didn't like, and I do the reflection at night so I can, right before I go to sleep, so my
Mhm.
subconscious is taking it all in. And then what I swear, when I wake up, before you know, by the end of the next day, so many times I've been given the opportunity, then I'm proving to my brain, you know what? I did react differently. I chose to not get involved in this conversation. It somehow people started talking about the same type of thing, and I was able to speak my truth. I feel so proud and good about it that I did. Or go to about to go to sleep, and I didn't do a healthy boundary. It triggered me. So the next day, given opportunity, I use that healthy boundary.
Mhm.
In the car situation, I'm like,
And
you know
it's not
what?
having any guilt with the matter of it because yesterday I started
Right.
feeling guilt, and that's
Oh,
not going to fix
shame in front of the
anything.
doctor. Right. I'm
Hmm.
shame. Like, oh, yeah.
I feel like that was
That's,
an important thing to remember for myself. And I think also I thought back to a certain situation that there was a time where I think that as women, we're told that we're overly sensitive.
Oh,
And I've
yeah.
always been, and I'm but doing like quotations if you're listening, just so you know, like overly sensitive. I've always been an overly sensitive child. And so your parents may have not met those needs because they haven't weren't able to tap into that sensitive side of them, or maybe they're just not sensitive. Like I've mentioned before in the previous podcast, maybe they were the cactus and you were the basil or the beautiful blooming flower. And
Yeah.
so your needs weren't met. So or maybe you had an overly controlling parent and your feelings weren't heard, and you had emotional abuse, or even just an absent parent. I think I want to mention that as well. Like you might have not even had a parent, so you had to deal with things on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And dealing with other people's emotions and situations might be very triggering to you because you don't know how to deal with it because you've only dealt with your own for the most part, and have had to seclude yourself during certain situations and comfort your own self. So you don't know how to comfort others. Um, so your desire to want things, for me as an overly sensitive child, going back to that, basically got pushed down. I was, the good girl, and so I wasn't being listened to my wants. So as an adult, I don't feel like I deserve to be seen. And then that equals even more like perfectionism, people pleasing, dimming our light for that survival as a child.
Yeah.
And I loved this story about the toy store. And so you bring your child into the toy store, right? And if you have kids or an aunt, a little nephew, niece, family friend, whatever, you bring them in to the toy store and you tell them, okay, we're only going to buy the toy for your cousin. And 90% of the time, the child's going to look around the toy store and find something they like. And so your child goes up and grabs the biggest dinosaur, the biggest Barbie, and they're like, Mommy, I want this. And you tell them no. And I think a lot of parents out there, or you've even just seen this in the store. Working as a cashier, I've also seen this. And they lose their mind. They're like, no. What do you mean, no? My cousin gets a toy. And so then you have many options, right? You have the option of telling them, no, we don't have money for this right now. No, because this we came in here for one thing. I've told you this in the beginning. And then there's also giving in and just saying, okay, go ahead, get the toy. I don't care. And in all those different circumstances, you are teaching them many different things. A money aspect of we can't afford it. That will end up being a trigger in the future. The aspect of, oh, I can't get what I want. And then also, oh, I can get everything I want. And even that, you think that that might be something that,
Mm-mm.
okay, my child's happy, but then it also makes them not look at you as a dependable parent as well. And I think that's something that I didn't realize. Sometimes I would just give in, and Malay now probably would be like, oh, well, that's not dependable. I can't, anything she says, whatever, out the door. But the thing to say to your kid instead is, I'm so happy that you want like this toy. That's so great to want things. There's moments where we are going to get the things that we want, but right now we only came in for your cousin's toy.
That's his birthday.
It's his birthday. Yes. And so explaining that to your child, and I mean, it's kind of hard, even like I would say 4 and under, to explain this to your child at times because it's just like, well, I want the toy. But it's still setting that like stone of, yes, it's great to want things. Like, and I never looked at a situation like that. And now I want to rewire Malay's brain to the point where I'm doing that because I want him to
Right.
get older and strive for things and realize
Yeah, it's
If even,
possible to have it later, just not
yeah,
now. Like
yeah.
there is possibility to have it later. And as they get older, it can be like, if you want to earn money to pay for half, I'll
I
pay
was
for the
gonna
other
say
half.
that's what you did with us.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that way I knew you guys really wanted something. It wasn't just constantly immediate gratification. If you
Hmm.
made half the money for it, I was like, I was more than willing to give you the other half because I knew what it took for a little kid to make money, like as well an adult too. But you guys were, you did it like mowed the lawn and all and cleaned your room and all these little things. Mom, what else? What can I do? What I can do? It taught a it taught another skill too of just like you know working for and appreciating. So when you received those things after that, there was much more care of that item. You're like, you
Hmm.
are not touching this Lego. This is like
Yes.
so special. It took me 5 weeks to pay for half for this army Lego or whatever they wanted. And I mean, that's what I think that pops up in my head.
Yeah.
So it made Christmas too and birthdays even more special because then it was like, what do you want? And there's, this is the thing. So like going into the birthday party, you can see, like maybe we can get it for your birthday. Maybe
Hmm.
this is, if this is something you still want, we can get it for your birthday. That's a great idea too. That just came to me.
Yes, I love that. Well, even just taking a picture of it. I did that for Christmas time.
That's a good idea.
And whenever we walked through the store and he wanted something, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's so great that you want that. Maybe Santa can bring it to you. Take a picture of it." Even I have him take a picture of it. And I'm like, "Okay, see, it's saved on mommy's phone, so I'll remember it. I'll make sure I send this to Santa." And it was fine. We're good.
Yeah. So there are options in different ways. There's so many different opportunities and avenues you can go to react differently. It's
Mhm,
just breaking that circuit or, shutting that circuit
mhm,
down. And that's the whole going within. And like I did with from the beginning, um, some things are going to be triggers, are going to be pretty freaking big. So face them
mhm.
quickly because if you go 2, 3, 4 weeks with the pain, the ego igniting, and then that goes into the
Yeah.
pain body, man, that pain body wants to be fed like a mother. It's
Yes, well,
like,
like,
yeah,
confirm your emotions too. Like we talked about with spiritual bypassing, you need to be like, yes, like you said,
I'm
I am a good
scared right
person,
now.
but this
Right,
is how I felt in the moment. Confirm
right,
those emotions that you felt because you're not a bad person for feeling how you feel at all.
right.
You were
And
rewired from that from a very young age. And whether you're 26 or 50 or 70 years old, that's a lot of breaking down that you have to do.
it's a ton of
It's
breaking down,
doable.
especially if you've not ever done the work. And that's what I'm finding for myself is that I'm all in on doing the work. There are times that it feels overwhelming when you have compound effects happening
Mm,
on the highest level. And I had a couple of really good people, males in my family, step up to the plate to talk to. And I just was very honest about certain things that were going on. And when I left that conversation, I started to realize, wow, you know, this stems from when I was 17. This stems from when I was 19,
yeah.
very strongly, but I knew it stemmed before even that. And it was really lovely, actually, even as hard as it was to see the truth of all of it and lay it out and recognize, hey, listen, every time it pops up, this is a circuit. So I was telling Ashlyn something very beautiful happened yesterday. I was in a hypnosis of my own. I took down in self hypnosis with my own self, and when I was deep down into a theta state, um, my higher self came in like a glowing light, and there was my old version of myself, all my circuits. Right? She walked up to me and she said, "You need to take that reel off." In other words, you keep on replaying all your past and how you're going to react in the future, and it's taking you out,
Hmm.
and your triggers are all popping up and you're witnessing them. But take the reel off. I took the reel off with her, and then she just, like a ghost, the spirit just came within my body And then she said, now we're creating the new real. Like, this is the new you, the new version of you, the best version of you. That's what we're walking forward with in the present moment. I want a new real on there. And that was extremely healing in that when I came out, because I was recognizing, yes, the pain body had emerged. My triggers had catapulted on top of each other. And then I went to my journal and I wrote down so many things and just said that I can leave this here. I didn't realize this was all going to come bubbling up. But the thing is now I have a new real, because I've got me. My higher self has me, and we're redoing the new story of dating. We're doing the new story of the career, as far as where I'm at, located. And then obviously the body image. Those three things seem to be such a big thing. Your health, your body image, money, and relationships are the three things. And they're all over here. And the other thing we've talked about this before, fear just pops those babies off. And that's your trigger. Most triggers are based, underlying the deepest root is going to be fear of abandonment, fear.
And I like to add too that sometimes we don't even remember where these triggers came from.
Right.
Because there's certain things that you won't remember about your childhood.
No.
You're like, I don't know. So don't feel bad. You're like, I have this trigger and I don't know where it comes
Right.
from. That's okay.
It's how is it playing out? Right.
Mm-hmm.
How did you just react to that person? More than likely was how you were treated, like we said, in that situation, or how you treated yourself as a little kid when you were put in that room or had to survive or whatever it was. Because many people we worked with have had really deep, dense, pain body, sad childhood stories. And it's not our purpose to all day long try to be perfect in how we react to things, because we're not going to. Like we said, triggers are our best friend. They're meant to help us rewire our circuits.
Yeah.
Yes, rewire the circuits.
The things and feelings that you're struggling with are just like the adaptations of how you grew up, whether it was like friends and your family and everything. I'd also like to add on to our little handy dandy tool belt that give yourself credit. The things that you have done made you get to this point, and your brain was trying to survive. So don't be down on yourself. Like my mom said, don't be down on yourself. Give yourself credit.
Right. So much
and you know what?
compassion.
Put your hand on your heart and say, thank you. Thank you for what you have done for me. Thank you for your service. I'm letting you go. There's no more. But thank you for what you did serve for me in the moment. Whenever I was being yelled at, thank you for protecting me for future circumstances. And then you can release it. Instead of just having, like you said, the guilt and the shame around it, it's more of like, thank you. You give it that gratitude for getting you to this point. Like, it's actually an amazing thing that protected us in that moment. But now you no longer need it.
And beyond depth of me walking that the last 3 weeks is I kept on having to step into self-compassion. I did what I knew best in every single moment in the time frame of my past that I was in. In the reflection, you can really beat the holy crap out of yourself. How did I get here? Why are my finances this way? Why am I not scared to date? Like, I think maybe I'll just be alone for the rest of my life because of what I've been through. There's just no way I can dare trust anybody to come into my life. There's stories that we have that are programmed, that are circuits. Whew, if we walk into those and believe them, they will just take us in either in the same spinning wheel of a hamster wheel story, or things will just get more dense. And it is very brave. So when you're walking through these, pat yourself on the back that you're so freaking brave. When I've watched some of my clients, some of the things that they've been through and what they dare do with going into dating or going in with their money and their new jobs and just witnessing them, I just tell them all the time, you are so brave. You have so much courage. And I'm so proud of you. You've got to be so proud of yourself. But guess where they're at? Their jobs are freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And they're in great relationships. And many of them are married. And so they're even encouraging for me as I'm being their biggest cheerleader of what we got to be our biggest cheerleader for our own selves.
To add to that, even just for the thanking part, but also reminding them that they are safe now. That
Safe.
little girl, you no longer have to go back to her because she's in a safe place. And if you aren't in a safe place, please analyze where you're at right now
Get out. If
and
you
get
can
out.
get the
But
police involved.
remind yourself that you are safe,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you need to honor these things that you went through
You deserve the
that are
best.
holding you
Yeah,
back, to release it. Release the
you
triggers.
do.
So recognize it and honor it.
Recognize, yeah, recognize the lovely, beautiful triggers. And if they keep on, we did a post on Instagram. You can't keep on going back and kissing the person that's hurting you. If the person keeps on triggering you, and I'm saying this in the fact we saying here, it's you. If you're being triggered, you've got to go do the work. But if it's a person that every day or like every fifth day is doing rage against you, or you're triggered because you're in a car with them and they know that they're making you so scared because they're getting so close
Constant
to the bumper,
gaslighting.
and yeah, and then they do the abuse in the car because you're locked into the car and you can't get out. You're on the freeway. That was one of my experiences, but the trigger really stemmed from when I was 17, and the person I was dating almost took me off several cliffs. There were probably about 4 situations that if I didn't answer the way he wanted to answer, at one point we were going about almost 100 miles per hour, and it was over like probably a 1,500-foot drop off, and it went straight road, and then it was going to turn about a 90-degree angle going down the big mountain hill, and
Wow.
he punched the gas. And so when I was doing the work of like, why was I so triggered on the road? Even they were still doing things that were scary, but I was ultra triggered
Mm.
compared to maybe somebody else. It stemmed from that situation where my heart was racing and I didn't know if my life was in his hands. I didn't know if he was going to push on the brake. And then I was forced to say what he wanted me to say,
Mm.
so that, not living your truth. There are different triggers there. Not speaking up, like for what you really truly believe in, learning to close your mouth or else, or say what people want you to say, the people pleasing situation. You wonder where these things come from.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this is all really raw, but it came from that. And so, of course, it's going to still show up in my life, just like when I read in the book, things will still appear in your life for your spiritual evolution. So for me to go back and beautifully, wonderfully heal from that moment when I was a little 17-year-old girl, very innocent, and prefrontal cortex was not fully developed, I was able to have situations and people to show up in my life that made me, first of all, stick up and start using my voice. And second of all, like Ashlyn said, get out of those relationships. If
Mm-hmm.
someone's going to, like, there are certain type of people that want to pop those triggers. And, oh,
Oh, balloons.
it's a celebration. Um, that you get out of. So with that, we can't stress it enough. If you're in an abusive relationship or narcissistic relationship, it could be a mother, it could be a intimate relationship. They are going to trigger you like crazy, but what it is asking you to stand up for yourself,
Yeah.
to walk away, and because your worth is valuable and you're meant to be on this earth and to share
Well, that's
pieces
whenever,
of your
too,
beautiful
you go
soul.
back to our boundary video and our codependency video,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll be able to get some really helpful tips on that.
Really helpful tips. In fact, we'll tag those 2 videos on this video.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be coming out with a breath work that's really, really helped me. And Ashlyn had said, like, I am safe. And one of the things I started to do to rewire my brain is, like they say, affirmations can be very helpful. But I think if you add it to music or breath work, it starts to implant faster, because it's, the songs you sing, you just remember them.
Mm-hmm.
So I do a breath work, and it's a 2-count breath. It's in through the belly, up through the heart, and then you breathe out very slowly. And I always say, I love you, or I am safe. For a while there, I was doing the I am safe, and then I went into I love you. And I'm going to do a very special breath work with that. You can choose. I'll say in the beginning, you can choose what state you're in, what you need at that time. More self-love, compassion. Do you need to feel safe? But that will be our next video that I will
And
be
follow
putting
us
up.
on at Now That's Love for updates on that too. So
Yeah.
can be
Now That's Love on Instagram. And down below, thank you all for supporting our channel, because Ashlyn, this is our dream for Ashlyn and I to show up and really truly serve the world in the biggest way. We want to have it be that anybody out there that is needing this information, that it's not like in a little bubble, that it has the capability on YouTube to reach the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
And this week, as I was writing my gratitude journal, I wrote every single day, thank you so much for those people out there, especially YouTube was such a place for us that we learned so many ways of healing, and we learned about triggers. We learned about the things that were going to help us. And that's why we're just putting everything that helped us through our journey on here. And it's from our heart to your heart. And we would like to hear from you down below, like triggers maybe that you've been walking through, or how you've walked through a trigger and what it helped so beneficially for you. Because it's not just about mine and Ashlyn's voice piece. This is a place for you all to have people come, and your comments really help, because you're helping other people too. You maybe not want to do a whole YouTube, but your comments down below might be seen by 500 people at some point, and you're helping other people. Or if you have questions, you're helping us know what you need more of, that we can help you with. So I just wanted
I'd also
to
like
state
to
that.
add to, so while you're working on your triggers, you, like we said, may begin to feel shame, guilt, and blame. But creating awareness around your triggers sometimes can also leave you in freeze mode, which I've been in before.
That's
And
what
I think
happened.
a lot of us
Yeah.
have done this, and most
Oh,
of us
yeah.
in society are here because look at how isolated this world is at times. We've adapted so long that we create this isolation because it feels safer to be by ourselves than to communicate with other people or to face our triggers. I remember whenever I was especially going through the spiritual bypassing, I was like, I don't want to have to face anymore. So everyone stand back. I am good on my own. But we have to remember that we're all here for love. And it's great to go and explore. You're not expecting perfection when you go into relationships or friendships. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So once we recognize that we want this love and that we don't need to be in freeze mode or this perfection, and it's okay if triggers come up, then that's where we can truly begin on our tool belt. And being positive with yourself is the key thing, I believe. So reminding yourself that I am a good person, and asking yourselves about these triggers that you're
Yeah.
going through.
That's
So, whenever something comes up, say, why did I react that way? Why did I react in that negative way? Something came up in your brain where you're like, that stupid bitch.
right.
Or it's just little things like that come up.
The instant reaction and asking why, because I do that all the time. And a lot of times I think it is in our head. I'll be like,
Yeah.
this person just did this, and I don't say it out loud, but I'll think something, and I'm like, well, that's because I'm fearful of this, or
Mm-hmm.
they're mirroring me in that, and I need to be okay with the fact that they're the way they are. This is me needing to work a little bit on the fact that I'm not okay with this person being critical or angry, that stems from so much.
Yeah, you have to remind yourself that you want that effective change
Right.
too. So, the tools and the repairs that we needed were just gonna do a little rehash real quick
Yeah,
with y'all
I
real
love the
quick,
rehash. Let's do the
going
rehash,
back on
Ashley.
it.
Let's do
So,
it.
number
These are the
one
tools.
is I am a good friend, partner, parent who blank, blank, blank reacted this
Reacted to
way.
this. Yeah,
hmm
yeah,
And then, so the first step is to talk good to yourself. Be positive with yourself, recognize it, acknowledge it,
yeah.
and
Diffuse
seeing
it.
that, yeah, see where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
Then your next step, number two, will be to repair. And this is whenever we pull out the big belt. All right, we pulled out the little belt. We talked positive talk to ourselves. So then you can go back to the person that triggered you. Like we mentioned before, you don't have to physically go back to them. So realize that it wasn't their fault that you yelled or reacted or were triggered. Ask about also your boundaries and how you can do better next time. So this doesn't keep rehashing. You're not like, oh, I'm triggered again. I'm triggered again on the same situation. Working on your triggers is not keeping going back to the same trigger. Sometimes, yeah, there's going to be moments where you're going to have to do, just have little moments where you're like, oh, I could have done better a little bit on this trigger. Like with Malay, I didn't yell at him and I set my boundaries with him, but I did seclude myself from him because I didn't want to handle his emotions. So I know next time I can give him more comfort, and also give yourself that comfort as well.
Right.
And then number 3 is see the signs of why the trigger came up. When did this path start or this feeling start where you felt triggered? So did you, like I mentioned, did not hold your boundaries, didn't honor something, didn't feel heard. Maybe you felt criticized in that moment, and you also felt like in a way that you abandoned yourself and didn't keep that promise to yourself. So all the things that maybe you felt as a child that came up during that situation.
Right.
So be motivated from a place of feeling good and not the shame or guilt belt, like I've said 5 times because I've done it.
Yeah.
It's from coming from a place that you want to do the work and you want to feel good and you
Yeah.
want
Be
to work on your
motivated.
relationship.
Yeah.
Like with Jerome in the beginning of our relationship, there were certain things that I did that I recognized that came from my childhood of just wanting to feel heard and needed, and why I was so scared to get criticized. And I would talk to him about it and we worked through it. We sat on the same side of the table, not the opposite ends of the table. And he said, okay, I can hear you on this. Or, oh, I didn't know how I reacted on this would, have doors slammed, So that was something I did as a child too. That's kind of, I look back and now laugh about it. But in some of my relationships, I would slam the door when things got hard, or I'd be like, I want to leave. Those are certain things that you can catch yourself on. Instead of working on it, you leave the situation. And feeling and thoughts are a part of us and not all of us. So also bringing that to the table and thinking, okay, what just happened? It's not me. It's my thoughts. It's a feeling. It's a little slice in your brain. It's like a pizza.
Lovely circuit wired.
Yeah, it's for
Right.
me, I look at it like a pizza,
Mm.
and my brain is the whole pizza. And literally, whenever you get triggered, it's like a little nibble of the crust. It's
That's a good
not the whole
analogy.
pizza. The whole
Yeah.
pizza's not destroyed. You'll probably still eat the pizza if a little nibble of the crust is off. I'm gonna be honest. If the pizza delivery guy did that, I'd be like, well, the other 7 slices are okay, so that's okay. And once you acknowledge and realize that, you can do these hard, quote unquote, hard things and be that positive person in your relationships and for yourself. Because I think that was one thing that I was walking through with my triggers, that I was noticing my parts on what I was playing. And I've talked about this in previous podcasts with me shutting down on certain situations and not wanting to talk about it. And when you can start seeing these triggers, gosh, does your life just become this big kaboom of how you got to where you're at?
Right. And you don't want to look back on 5 years, 10 years and be having the same things of being affected. Like where I'm at now and learning everything that I've learned in the last 4 years, especially. I just think, man, I'm so grateful Ashlyn's the age she is and she knows all this information. But I'm not going to be hard on myself. But it's they still will show up. You're not going to run away, escape the things that have happened in your life because they're going to play out in your life. They're
Mm-hmm.
just in it with different characters. And the reality to that is like, that's why like Ashlyn said, go in with loving compassion, be motivated to be so positive on yourself, because they got there because we were critical of ourselves, or we didn't have that nurturing, loving that we are showing up with ourselves, like we said, even in the shadow work, because it shows up. It is a piece of shadow work. And I'm the walking testament of like a crazy girl. I could probably write 5,000 books. And I'm just kidding. I could write 5 books on just the repeat cycles. My brother had just sent me a thing. He's a chief financial officer, and I'm having him like walk through different things for my finances. And he said, will you give me a list of things, that, your rent, all your expenses and your entertainment expense and different things. And honestly, it was a rude awakening for me. And this is where I'm saying this because my initial reaction wanted to be, you're pathetic to what I recognized. And then I had to go in and be like, no, remember you put the new movie reel on. But as far as entertainment goes, my entertainment expense, I see so many people out doing things. I had not done that. Admittedly so. I would go out with people and hang out with people, but drink water or whatever. I would do nature. I would get out, but it was like, what am I really doing? Am I going to the movies? Am I going?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not that I can't. And so it's a beautiful thing to recognize where we can step in and help our own selves and change
Well, isn't it
life.
so
And
true that it always just comes down to ourselves and how deeply we love ourselves?
right.
None of these tools that we'll give you, well, they won't work unless you love yourself.
You've got
So
to go
you
into
have to love yourself
self-compassion.
first.
Yeah.
And
You don't just go into compassion, and everything's possible. So it is possible for me to go to do whatever with entertainment. There was just so much of a story reel that I had on different things. And so I'm being honest, I'm walking through some different things, and maybe you are too. I know several women that have been in years of abusive relationships, and their safe places just to, like I was doing, going to the library, going out in nature, hanging out with a family. It's safe. Hanging out with really lovely friends, and that's it. Like the box was, that was it. They were, I'm not going to go do anything else. And
Mhm.
I just would always talk myself out of entertainment because I'd be going solo or whatever. And but I did go to a couple movies a while back by myself, but then you talk yourself into, well, I do have TV at home and stuff. So I'm walking through that because that's not good. That's reflection. And that's something that now I'm going to change, right? I'm
Mhm.
going to change it. So
Yeah, it's good to
that's just
face it
here
head
where
on at
now.
times.
It'll be fun to
Like,
see where I'm at in 6 months.
because if you don't go outside of the house, it might feel great because you're like, I'm isolated. I don't have to face anything. I don't have to recognize any of my triggers. And I
Yeah.
realized that whenever I went into isolation mode for about 3 months, and I stepped outside the house and to hang out with people, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's like I got bombarded with like
Yeah.
little
That was
triggers
like,
and perfectionism and saying, oh my gosh, should I not have said that? Did I overthink this situation? Oh, did they take
yeah.
this personally? Did I talk too much? Did I take over the conversation? All those little silly things that run through your head.
Yeah.
And it's just like the little things, that little girl comes out and just wants to be loved and heard and
Yes.
comforted. She comes out, and I have to talk to her sometimes. I'll get in the car and I'll be like, you know what, little Ashlyn, you are loved. You love yourself.
I
You are
know.
a good person. You're a great friend. And if they thought those things, that is the silly, that's so silly because you are such a gift to be around. Like, talk to how you would want to talk to your little girl self,
Right.
how
Bill.
you wanted your parents, or even just to go back and maybe, like I said, you had no parents, you had absent parents that weren't there, and you walk into that room, that bedroom where she's laying there alone, and you're just like, sit on the bed with her and just be like, oh my gosh, like, let's talk. Like, you have somebody to talk to now. Let me be your
Mm-hmm.
adult in your life that just gets to love you and nurture you. It's just, I go back, I have little pictures of my little girl self that I look at sometimes, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. That's another thing to add to your tool belt. If you're having troubles talking to your little girl self, put that picture up, or your little boy self too. I
Yeah.
want
How
to
would
add
you
that.
treat that little girl?
To
Right.
talk to
It's
her. And I
so,
usually pick like my top two favorite pictures or top three that I really just feel connected to. And I talk to her and I'm just like, you know what? Like, you were so funny. You look at those bows on your hair. Oh my gosh, you are so confident. Like, those words of affirmations are just so important. And journaling that down, like you said, whenever you are sitting down in that room with that person that you might not be able to sit down with. We have amazing journals that can support you during this journey. And like you said, it just comes from a place of our hearts. And I'm really happy. I'm glad that we were able to knock out the dark shadow and the triggers and the codependency, because I want y'all to know that these are the foundations from episode 1 to episode now 29. These are your laying stones for how to heal and be your best self and create that self-love within yourself, because we're going to start moving on to intuition and men and women relationships and chakras and all these fun things. But we were like, you know what? We need to lay it out here.
Yeah, our
We
first
need to
30
set the
episodes.
stone.
Yeah, our first 30 episodes were the tool belt. We wanted to lay out things that have literally worked for us. And as you can see with this triggers thing, I think it's quite ironic that, I'm on this little train track of happy peacefulness. And then we decide we're going to do the dark night of the soul.
Oh, yeah.
And we decide we're going to do triggers, and everything came up. But
now we have no more forgiveness for episode 30. So that's a good right there.
So something big is going to happen that I'm going to have to forgive. No, I'm kidding. It's interesting how the universe is working through Ashlyn and I to show up here very raw, because it has been 3 weeks of just like, wow, holy moly, dark night of the soul, the dark shadow, I've had all these crazy triggers come up. But like, that's why we're giving you these tools, because we have them.
Well, we're coming from a raw place for sure.
They work. Yeah. And there's nothing out there. This is something that popped into my head from the past times of barely being able to make it out of some situation, is that the voice in your head may say the most crazy things, and you've got to tell it to stop, or you've got to tell it that it's not the truth. You lay your head down to sleep, and then it's really going to be obnoxious at times. Mm-hmm. And I all of a sudden started to have this thing of like hopelessness. And then it drew into, why are you even here? It's just time to check out. Like, you're done with this earthly life. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Shut up. That's not true. It's not true. And so I say that because I know there's a lot of people out there that are going through things, that are suffering, and that you have moments of just feeling like so alone. Yeah. I'm just wanting to state that, because it's all in my heart of why we're even using this video. Hi, Lele. This is Ashlyn's little sweetheart. So anyways, we'll end there. We are sending you all so much love. Don't feel hopeless. Know that this is just one little day at a time.
And also let us know what other podcasts you'd like us to do. If you want us to add even a little bit more onto just anything, maybe we can do a part 2. More meditations, whatever you want.
And don't be scared to comment like somebody's going to know where you live. Use your voice. If anything, we talk often here about just living your authentic truth and not worrying about what other people think. So say whatever you want to say down below. Who cares? Like, it's you. It's what you want to say. Speak
don't dim your light.
Don't dim your light. Just say whatever. And even if it's a problem, I mean, you've just listened to Ash and I be pretty raw on here. So anyways, much love to all of you. Bye-bye.
Bye.